This video I want to go over the running in the heat, okay? Training on a treadmill versus outdoors, okay? I always preach the importance of thinking outside the box and working smarter rather than harder, okay? I've always said too that, you know, as you all know, there's a massive difference between doing a tempo run or an anaerobic threshold run in 90 degrees Fahrenheit versus 55 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? So you have to make sure that you adjust your training, you adjust your paces due to that, due to the heat and due to the humidity, okay? Don't place so much emphasis on hitting the exact splits that are, if you're following one of my training plans or if you've invested in one of my courses. Don't feel like you have to hit the exact paces on those specific workouts in order to succeed. Sometimes you can adjust it by a few seconds. You know, I always preach to the V.O2 calculator. Google that, bookmark that. On the calculator itself, so that there's an advanced features button. Click on that and then type in the temperature that's outside, so that again, it'll adjust your paces. If you had track workouts and you had 800, say you were doing 800s and they were supposed to be done in 245 per 800, okay? Normally on my courses and in my training plans, it's just based off of normal Fahrenheit or normal Celsius temps. So make sure that you bookmark that and you adjust that so that again, you can offset what paces you really need to be hitting on, you know, based off of temperatures, okay? But I think that running indoors at times is a smarter move, running on a treadmill versus running outdoors, because again, you're gonna get a better workout running indoors. Again, you can adjust the incline about a 0.5% to 1%. That'll offset, you know, that'll equal basically running outdoors, because again, indoors there's no wind resistance, so you do have to be on an incline, but not always. I mean, I've done tempo runs, I've done long runs on the treadmill at 0% incline, okay? It's just, the only difference is if say you're running at 7-minute mile pace on the flat, really you're running around 7:08, 7:10 mile pace if you're on 0% incline. You don't have any incline whatsoever. So I think at times you're just gonna have to. I mean, if it's 90 degrees or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, you know, I lived out in San Antonio, Texas for several years, and there were a lot of times where I had no issues training on a treadmill. The world's top distance runners, world record holders, they train on a treadmill. So what's the issue? I think a lot of times runners psych themselves out. They think that, and not always, but I think that sometimes they think that running on a treadmill is somehow less than running outdoors. And that's not necessarily always true. Again, that's just my opinion, but of course, nothing beats running outdoors. You do want to train outdoors as much as you can versus training on a treadmill, but running in the heat is an entirely different animal, okay? There's a lot of runners that even athletes that do very well on the track or on the roads in terms of racing, they can sustain the race pace even in the heat. Even they sometimes have a hard time racing in the heat, and their race performances are drastically impacted by heat and humidity, okay? You know, example, I remember back in 2007 at the Chicago Marathon, they actually shut the race down about 3 or 4 hours in because it was the hottest race conditions in the history of the race. And at that day, I was trying to qualify for the 2008 USA Track and Field Olympic Trials for the marathon, and it was my last opportunity to qualify because the trials in the Olympic trials in America for 2008 were actually held in November of 2007. So the Chicago Marathon was in October, so I had one last shot. And it turns out, you know, you never know with Chicago. It can be perfect conditions, it can be cool, and then some years it can be hot. That year, I landed on the worst possible day. And I'm 100% a cold weather runner, okay? And I went out in 111 the first half and actually wanted to drop out. The Army WCAP program, the World Class Athlete program, had flown me out there, and it was a disappointing performance. I had to pretty much walk and jog the last 14 miles, and I came in with a 2:51 time. And didn't even remotely close come to the 2:22 flat or faster time I needed. But 3 months later, temperatures at the California International Marathon were 45 degrees versus high 70s to 80 degrees at Chicago, and I ran 2:19. Okay, so you have to know that the amount of stress that heat and humidity places on the body has to work so much harder to stay cool in these types of temperatures. So make sure that you are adjusting your paces. Okay, I can't stress that enough. Even if you have a race coming up and you have maybe a half marathon or a 10-mile race or even a marathon that you're planning to run in the summer months, and maybe you're trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon, and maybe you'll still go out there and hit a BQ, okay, even in the heat. But a lot of times runners, I would just advise, if you're running in the heat, to readjust your goals. Okay, it's not to say you can't still achieve it. It's just, I think that a lot of times runners pick the wrong times to run races, especially of the longer type races. These 5K, you can kind of get away with it, or if you're running a 1500 or a mile on the track, or a 2 mile or 3,000 meters on the track outdoors, you can get away with that in the heat, even though your performance still can be affected. But the longer these races, if you're running a 10-mile race or a 25K or a 20K, half marathon or a marathon, and it's 70 degrees or hotter, Fahrenheit or hotter outside, it's going to be a long day at the office, okay? And I think that you really have to not only pay attention to your paces, but also make sure that you're hydrating very well. But I think, and that's why when I'm talking about running in the heat, either training on a treadmill versus outdoors, I think it's a smart move at times to really check your ego at the door and say, hey, it's 80 degrees outside and I have to do repeat 3200s on the track, or I have to do repeat 1600s on the track, or repeat 800s. The longer these intervals, I'm telling, as you all know, I know I'm preaching to the choir, it's hard to hit the paces that you're aiming for in those types of temperatures. Why not get on the treadmill, okay? If Jakob Ingebrigtsen, the world record holder for the 2,000 meters, 1,500 meters indoors, third all-time fastest for the mile outdoors at 3:43.73, world record holder for the 2 mile at 7:54. If these types of level of athletes can train on the treadmill and not think less of it, not think that they're getting less of a workout by training indoors when it's really hot out, then why can't you and I? You know what I mean? So I think it's important to really consider the benefits of training on a treadmill when it's really hot out versus training outdoors and running dismally slower when you're trying to do a tempo run or an AT run, anaerobic threshold run, when it's 90 degrees out. Okay, sometimes I think I think we all have that ability to work very hard, but working smart is something most of us have not been taught how to do. Okay, we've all been taught to work extremely hard, but sometimes you can work extremely hard and not get the goals or not get the results that you're aiming for. So I think it's smart to really consider that sometimes treadmill training, getting on the treadmill and thinking about, hey, I can get a much better workout in 60 degrees training indoors, running on a treadmill at incline if I choose to, or on the flat if I choose to, versus going outside and being forced to not only have to drink so much more outdoors, and then my paces are drastically off the paces that I was aiming for my repeat 3 mile reps on the roads, or if I'm doing a specific set of reps on the track, I know my paces are going to drastically be slower outdoors. Now again, don't get me wrong, I still think training outdoors is still critical, and you still have to heat acclimatize yourself, okay? You may be racing in hot and humid conditions, so again, you do have to spend some time outdoors to get acclimated to that, and not spend all of your time training on a treadmill, okay? Because again, if you're doing that too often, then again, you're not really adapting to the types of temperatures you're aiming for. But there are some times where I think it's smart to get indoors and to have a much better workout. It's going to help you psychologically as well, because you know you hit the splits, you know you hit the workout that you were aiming for. And training on a treadmill is nice because you can just set the pace and it'll sit right at the pace that you're aiming for. And so keep those things in mind. I hope this video is helpful for all of you in terms of the topic of running in the heat. Is it better to train on a treadmill versus outdoors, and some of the pros and cons of each? If you have any other questions, leave me a comment below. I always respond to every comment or email that I get. I try to keep up with them, but I really value your input as well. Let me know in the comment section also. I'd be really interested to hear your viewpoint of training on a treadmill versus outdoors in the heat, and how you've handled that. And really be interested in hearing your thoughts on that as well. So thanks again for all of your support, and I will talk to you guys and gals all in the next video.